Good afternoon and good morning for some of you still. Welcome to this webcast on changes to the CMF guidelines. This should be an hour of pretty enthralling broadcasting for you all. My name is Stéphane Cardin and I'm with my colleague Nathalie Clermont, who's our Director of Programs. We're going to be presenting you first with an overview of our program budget, then we'll get to the changes to the guidelines per se. Just before we start, just wanted to mention that the changes to the guidelines this year are mostly aimed to respond to the recommendations that were contained in the program evaluation of the CMF that was conducted by the Department of Canadian Heritage last year, the report that was released in November, if memory serves me correctly. And it contained 7 recommendations, 2 of which were related to how they measure the performance of the CMF and how we measure the performance of the content that we fund. 5 of those recommendations, though, were related more to our policies and programs. And just to recap, those were to encourage the CMF to consider whether additional steps can be taken to reward audience success in light of consolidation in the industry since the CMF's launch. And we did make some changes to our definitions of original first-run programming in the performance envelope program, which we announced prior to the end of 2015, so in December 2015. The second recommendation was to encourage the CMF to ensure that the industry has the necessary flexibility to determine which forms of value-added content are best suited to each individual project, and we'll be talking about that. Work with the CMF to review its support for web series. That's a discussion that is still ongoing with the Department of Canadian Heritage. So there are no changes to our programs in that respect for now. The fourth, to encourage the CMF to clarify the objectives of the experimental stream as concerns commercialization and innovation. We'll get to that. The changes have been made. And the fifth, encourage the CMF to consider ways to improve Canada's television and digital content industry's competitive position on the global stage. And there'll be a few program changes related to that as well. There are issues, just want to touch on that from the very beginning, that were discussed during the consultation process last fall. And in particular, the working group that had to do with CMF's definition of eligible license fees, license fee thresholds, and other rights. For which we originally did expect to make changes in the guidelines for this year, but again, because of competing priorities, those will come back during the consultation process this fall so that we can bring those discussions to a close and make the necessary changes next year. So without further ado, we'll get into the program budget. Nathalie?
Just before you start, Stéphane, first of all, hello everybody. If you want to write to us to ask questions, we'll have a little time at the end of the presentation to respond to some of your questions. So you have on your screen the information you need to contact us. So it's info@cmf-fmc.ca or through the webcast page. You can also leave us some questions.
We have sound effects.
Yeah.
All right, so the program budget for this year is
Is it for us?
$371.2 million. That's a decline of $4 million, mostly attributable to reductions in contributions from broadcast distribution undertakings or BDUs. So how those affect mostly in the English language market, a lot of programs saw their envelope allocations increased. $1 million increase to the allocation to the Aboriginal languages program. We created a new program to support exports of the content that we fund. So that is one of the measures that aligns with recommendation number 5 in the program evaluation about improving Canada's audiovisual industry's competitiveness. That program is not yet launched. We will launch it likely in the fall, and we're working on some program design right now. The experimental stream, its program budget allocation did not change, but it does proportionally represent an increase given the $4 million reduction in the overall program budget. Other programs that were increased, we did notice last year a rather significant decline in the percentage of CMF funding in the English market that went to regional projects. CMF has set for itself a target that a minimum of 40% of its funding go to projects from the regions. And for the first time in almost 5 years, the results dipped to approximately 35% last year. So we did make a number of changes to the program guidelines themselves, but in terms of program allocation, we increased the regional pre-development program by $250,000. We increased the Anglophone minority incentive by $500,000 to $4.5 million, and we made a significant increase to the regional production bonus, $1.5 million increase to $13 million. The Convergent Digital Media Incentive budget was for its part reduced. I'll get to that, explain it in more detail when we get to the guideline changes. The English POV program increased by $500,000, with the result that the performance envelopes decreased by $6.7 million in the aggregate. And by the way, the broadcasters' envelope allocations will be posted to our website tomorrow, performance envelope allocations, and development allocations should be communicated to broadcasters tomorrow or the day after, and they'll be posted to our website in 2 weeks. So Nathalie will take over and start talking about the experimental stream.
Yeah. So we did the changes to the experimental stream in line with what was mentioned by Stéphane in the program evaluation from DCH, from the department, in fact, to clarify our position for innovation versus commercial. So we've decided to create a commercial program that will focus or will add emphasis on potential for commercial success. We've created this commercial projects pilot program, which will have a budget of $10 million. This $10 million is taken from the 4.5 experimental stream overall budget. And we will support in this program projects that are innovative, but with added focus on commercial success. These type of projects were not eligible in the past because innovation was the main focus of the program. So we still require some kind of innovation, but really we are looking for a project that will have a huge appeal to the audiences and will generate revenues for the producers and for the CMF as well. This program will focus only on production. It won't be possible to apply for development and marketing as is it the case for our innovation program. And we will be able to finance up to 50% of the eligible costs, or $1.2 million. It's a selective program with a jury like we used to do for the innovation program. And there will be one date for this program this year. It will be September 13. All the details of the program are in the guidelines and in the recoupment policy. So you'll see what the differences are between the innovation and the commercial program. For the innovation program now, we have decreased our maximum contribution for the production activity in fact. We are still offering up to 75% of the cost as compared to 50% for the commercial. As you know, in this program, we support projects that are more risky because they are experimental, they are innovative, so we are ready to take more risk with the producer. So we are keeping our maximum contribution to 75%, but our maximum contribution in terms of dollar is lowered to $1 million. However, the overall projects through the different steps or the different activities can sum up to 1.2 million if you come in development, production, and marketing. We have also made some changes to the evaluation grid to clarify, in fact, some aspects of the criteria we are looking at through our evaluation. One other important change that we made to the innovation program is that we will no longer be able to apply to the marketing and promotion if you haven't been selected or financed through production before. So it's no longer possible for you to only come for the promotion stage. One other change is to our recoupment policy for the innovation program. You used to be able, before you start sharing your revenues with us, you were able to deduct up to 75% of the gross exploitation revenue for your commission fees and expenses, and also for enhancements costs for your projects. It will still be the case for the first year of exploitation of your project, but for the subsequent year, second year, and up to 7 years, this will be reduced to 50%. Finally, the Accelerator Partnership Program. It's no longer a pilot program, so we think that this program is very helpful for a producer. We truly believe it was a big success, so we are making it a regular program now. It's no longer a pilot program. And previously, we were able to support through the HUP, or the former H3P, project that came in previously in development and production. However, we've made a change this year to say that you can apply to H2P if you received money previously in production and marketing. We thought that it was too early at the development stage to be able to follow an acceleration program. So we made that change, and we revised also the list of approved business accelerators that can participate in the program. But if you want to work with another accelerator, just come to us and we'll see if their program is responding to the objective of the programs, and we can make them eligible.
Okay, now we're going to turn to the convergence stream and the changes that were made to respond to the second recommendation in the program evaluation and about providing the industry with the necessary flexibility to determine which forms of value-added content are best suited to each project. So just a quick bit of history here. You'll recall that when the CMF was launched in 2010, originally it had been considered that every television project funded in the convergence stream should have a related digital media component, so in 100% of the cases. But we did have some negotiations and discussions with the Department of Canadian Heritage, and where we landed in the end was based on envelope spend. And the rule was that 60%, or broadcasters had to spend a minimum of 60% of their envelope on one or several projects that had a, by our definition, rich and substantial digital media component. I would say that now what we're, and that I guess the focus in the first few years was really more on creating a critical mass of digital media content. I'd say that this year is a bit of a transition year, and I think that we're going to start seeing a focus less on critical mass and more perhaps on the quality of the digital media components, so that we can invest more substantially in those projects when it makes sense for that particular television project. So how that translates for producers, first of all, is that you'll now be able to produce either a rich and substantial digital media component or a value-added digital media component. We haven't created a distinct definition for each of those. You still have to meet the minimum bar that we had for rich and substantial before, but the differentiation is by budget. And so essentially, any project with a budget of less than $100,000 in the English market will be considered value added, and those that are above, that are 100K and above, will be considered rich and substantial. To make it simpler administratively for you, applicants, and for the CMF program administrator at Telefilm, if you only have a value-added digital media component, we're going to allow you to include those expenses in your TV production budget and therefore to submit only one single application. It's only when you're doing rich and substantial digital media components that you'll need to continue to do a separate budget and a separate allocation. How that translates into more flexibility for broadcasters is that, as I said, before broadcasters had to spend 60%, a minimum of 60% of their projects, of their envelopes, on projects that had rich and substantial digital media components. They'll still be able to do that. The other option will be to have a minimum of 60% of the projects that they license. So in this case, it's not based on spend, it's based on number of projects that either have, well, that have a digital media component that's either value added or rich and substantial. So there's two ways to meet the tests. So this is the approach that we'll be trying this year, and we'll see how that goes and adjust as need be. I think that is yours. Yeah.
And in fact, to calculate what the threshold will be now for value added, now that you have to put your costs in your television budget, we have created a special line item. It's line item 85, where you should put all your value added costs. It makes it clearer if you have, other partners that don't want to relate to these costs. It's easy to take it out, but for us it will be under line item 85. So for the threshold for television, you will follow the thresholds that are in our grid, so the usual threshold for television, and you will have to meet the threshold for digital media only on line item 85. So it will be easier to make the calculation. Then we are combining both amounts when it's time to calculate the split between LFP and EIP. The split will be calculated on the combined amount, and we will only sign one agreement with you for both components, in fact. So if you have, however, a rich and substantial digital media component, you will continue to have two separate applications.
All right, another change that applies to all convergent programs in production also seeks to respond to one of the recommendations in the program evaluation about competitiveness and assisting with the discoverability of content, is that we've increased the marketing expenses cap. So you used to be entitled to include up to 3% of the B+C of your TV components budget. For this year, we've increased that to 5% with a maximum amount of $300,000. But for smaller projects, we felt that the 5% cap was too limitative. So if your expenses in marketing are $10,000 or less, there won't be a percentage cap imposed. As we said, I think this was discussed during the consultation process. For us, it's important that this increase in expenses is not meant to supplement marketing and promotion expenses that are usually incurred by broadcasters. This is really to try and assist producers with those types of marketing, often on the digital side, that are falling under their responsibility. So it's something that we'll keep our eye on and perhaps increase if the results are favorable on a go-forward basis.
Yeah. And in fact, over the time, in fact, we've made some changes to the marketing eligible type of costs that you were able to put in your budget, like digital media or viral marketing expenses. These costs will now be qualified under the value-added component and no longer under marketing expenses. Also, basic websites that were excluded from the marketing expenses will now be able to be claimed as a value-added component.
Another change has to do with our essential requirements. We're providing here a little bit more flexibility, and I really do emphasize the a little bit, is that we've had a few cases where projects did qualify under Telefilm Canada's, under the official treaty CoPros as administered by Telefilm at the advanced ruling stage and then CAVCO for final certification, that qualified under those rules but did not meet all of the CMF's essential requirements. So we've decided, just as a question of simplification and harmonization, that a project that does abide by the treaty requirements will de facto be deemed eligible to the CMF. So it does provide a little bit more flexibility, but we don't think that the impact will be significant in terms of numbers of projects. I mentioned in my introduction that the topic of license fee thresholds and related, the definition of eligible license fees and so on was discussed in a working group, and that we'll be revisiting that next fall. But we did make one exception. There is one proposal that was formally made by the CMPA and discussed in that working group that we did act upon, and that is to lower the license fee threshold for theatrical dramatic feature films. The proposal hopefully is to provide an incentive for broadcasters to license and air dramatic feature films in prime time, and for that reason we did support that proposal. And the other license fee thresholds, as I said, we'll revisit that in the fall.
Qualification for regional production now. Previously, to qualify as a regional production, all your principal photography needed to be incurred in the region, happen in the region, yes, exactly. We are now providing a little bit more flexibility by saying that the overwhelming majority of principal photography should happen in the regions. So there's no precise percentage. It will be a case-by-case evaluation, but we want you to be able to do some shooting in a non-regional setting if it's needed for your project, but it will be really on a case-by-case basis that we will evaluate your request in this on this particular issue. And also the same principle will apply for animation projects, where we will require that the overwhelming majority of the key animation activities take place in regions.
So we don't want to give you a percentage, but overwhelming majority does not mean 51%.
Yeah.
So if you're going to try that, the answer will be no. All right.
Selective programs now, so English POV program, Aboriginal program, Francophone minority, and diverse languages program. We have made some changes to the evaluation grid. One that is applicable to all 4 programs is the reduction of the DM criteria weight. it was usually 50 points that was going to a
15.
Up to 15 points that were going to digital media, a rich and substantial component. Now with the added flexibility for or value added or digital media, we have reduced this weight to 10 points. It's up to 10 points for rich and substantial digital media component that you would submit, and up to 5 points if you are submitting projects that would qualify under the value-added definition. The 5 points that is reduced from the DM criteria is going to the creative elements. So it used to be 35 points, it is now 40 points. For Aboriginal control of the...
It's just like at home.
Yeah, no, not our own. Aboriginal and Diverse Languages program. We've made for only these 2 programs another change to the evaluation grid. Previously, 25 points were designated for market interest, and 15 out of these 25 points were going to the broadcaster commitment, so the license given by the broadcaster. We are now reducing this to 20 points, so 10 points for the broadcaster commitment. We realized that in the Aboriginal program in particular, most of the projects are triggered by APTN, and they were in some ways competing with themselves. These projects are coming from all over the country, and there's no the support programs in other provinces are not the same all over the country. So APTN was compensating to give more money for projects that didn't have support from their province or territories, for example. So the level of their commitment in terms of license didn't represent their interest in the project. So we've decided to reduce this weight on the market interest criteria. And to compensate the 5 points, we've increased the program objective from 15 points to 20 points for both Aboriginal and Diverse Languages program. Also, in the Aboriginal program, we used to say that at least 20% of the Aboriginal version of the television component has on-screen dialogue or narration that has been shot in an Aboriginal language. Once again, now we are providing a little bit more flexibility by saying that the producers will make their best efforts to reach that 20% of Aboriginal version in the TV component. We've realized that it was probably difficult for some of the producers to reach that 20%, even if it's a program dedicated for Aboriginal languages. It's important to remember that. Some of the language are not still speak really often, and it was hard for producers to find characters that were able to convey the languages. So if they are unable to reach that 20%, we will consider that on a case-by-case basis and see if the program still meets the objective of the program. Diverse Languages program, we are also giving a bit of flexibility by saying that even if we still want this program to be targeted to projects in other language than English, French, and Aboriginal, you can now have some English, French, or Aboriginal languages in your program as long as your other languages are still the majority of your project, as long as your broadcaster is putting performance envelope money in your project in a similar percentage as the time that you have another language in your program. So let's say it's 50% in Mandarin and 50% in English. We will ask a split 50-50 between the envelope and the diverse language program as our contribution.
All right, so I mentioned we did a number of things to try and encourage support to English regional projects. So I mentioned that we increased the English regional production bonus by 1.5 million, the allocation. But we also made changes within the rules of the incentive itself. So it used to be a 10% top-up. We've increased that to 15%. However, the dollar amount remains the same at $1 million. Another change that we made is, you might recall that we used to have two closing dates, and at the first closing date, no given province or territory could access more than 30% of the total allocation of the program. And at the second date, all provinces and territories could come back in if there were unused funds. Obviously, this made it such that, particularly in Vancouver, there was a very high level of access to the incentive. So the change that has been made this year is that will increase the cap from 30 to 35%, but after the first closing date, the funds will only be made eligible to those provinces that have not yet reached the 35% cap. Is there something is that okay? Did I say something wrong? No? Not really? Just partially. Okay. Anglophone minority incentive. So we increased the program budget by $500,000. In this case, it was already a license fee top-up of 15%, so it stays the same. However, the per project maximum in this case has been increased, given that there's more money in the incentive, from $800K to $900K per project. We also just clarified something in the guidelines, which is that a project can still receive access to the incentive if it has an English language broadcaster and a French language broadcaster providing eligible license fees, but the share of those coming from the English language broadcaster have to be higher. So the lead broadcaster has to be the English language broadcaster. So now I'll turn it over to Nathalie.
Yes, for the Northern Incentive, we have decided to expand this program this year to include development projects from producers that are based in Nunavut, Yukon territories, and Northwest territories. Previously, this program was only dedicated to production, so now you can apply for both development and production, and you can look at the different specifications or provisions that are in the guidelines to see what are the rules for development in particular. It's within the program right now. And we have also decided to increase our maximum contribution to DM component. It used to be up to 75% of the eligible cost, or $50,000. We are keeping the 75% cap, but we are increasing our maximum contribution in terms of dollar to $100,000. CDMI.
All right. So what I was mentioning earlier, that we're looking, to shifting our approach with respect to the CDMI, which, as you probably know, has been highly oversubscribed in the last number of years. We've made some changes, first of all, to create, I guess, a higher bar to access. It used to be that you could access that program with a DM component with a budget of at least $100,000. Based on what we've seen in the English language market, we are increasing that bar to a minimum of $350,000. So we'll be supporting, bigger budget, more expansive projects, and also to try and curb the oversubscription. Up until now, any given broadcaster could, or broadcast group could, trigger up to 5 projects per year. We'll now reduce that to 3 to try and make it that we don't have the level of proration that we've seen in prior years, which sometimes was as low as, I believe, 30, 40%. So we'll monitor the impacts of these changes over the year, and if need be, revisit. But the emphasis there will be on supporting larger scale projects.
For the development program, in fact, the only major change that we made is, to have the same approach as in production with regard to a digital media component. So it will be possible to qualify with value added or with rich and substantial, and the same 60% of the envelope or 60% of the number of projects will apply for the development envelope for the broadcasters. In terms of the size of the budget that will qualify as value added or rich and substantial, it's $10,000. So if you're less than $10,000, you are considered value added, and you have to submit your costs through the development of the television production, the television development budget.
Is there anything else in there?
No, it's the same thing. Yeah.
All right. So with respect to our business policies, we made a few changes. Just again, in this instance, trying to provide a little bit more flexibility. So it used to be that you had to provide completion protection for projects where the CMF contribution was less than $250K. We've now increased that to $500K. With respect to our standard recoupment policy, you may recall that we actually announced a change last year as a result of the working group that we'd had specifically on our standard recoupment policy. And that rule comes into effect this year. So it used to be that we had two models for recoupment based on or differentiated on whether there was an eligible distributor attached to a project. We are no longer making that differentiation. So it's the former Model B that will now be the only recoupment model. And the impact of that is that the federal tax credit is moved to a lower tier where it will be recouped after all of the other investors have recouped their investment. So yes, that one is more advantageous for the CMF and other investors than it is for the producers. But on the other hand, we've made another change, which in this case is more favorable to independent producers. And it solves, I'd say, a question of equity. It's that producers are entitled to recoup their provincial tax credits on Tier 2. But given that most provinces and territories actually do not have tax credit programs but have other types of incentives that in certain cases are similar to tax credits, we felt that created an inequitable situation. So we've now created a designated list of specific provincial and territorial incentives that the CMF will treat the same as tax credits. And I'm going to read you here the alphabetical list. So only these programs are entitled to this treatment. If some of these programs are changed or new ones are created, they'll have to be approved so that it's not, just to make it clear that it's not every single grant and or incentive mechanism provided by a province and territory that can be recognized under our standard recoupment policy. So the list is the Alberta Media Fund. Obviously this is in the guidelines, but just to share the information. Alberta Media Fund, New Brunswick Film and Television Industry Production Program, Nova Scotia Film and Television Industry Production Incentive, Nunavut Spend Incentive Rebate, Northwest Territories Film Rebate Program, Saskatchewan Screen-Based Media Production Grant, and the Yukon Film Location Incentive Spend Rebate. So that's the complete list. Nathalie?
Yeah. As for the cross-collateralization, my God, eh?
Each get one.
Yeah, cross-collateralization of revenues and expenses. This is not permitted under the CMF rule in the standard recoupment policy. It was not permitted between territories, so between Canada and the rest of the world, and it was not permitted either between the titles, the different titles carried by a distributor. Now we are expanding the restriction on cross-call between other media and platforms. So it's no longer possible to cross-collateralize revenues and expenses for different platforms.
So we're going to go to the questions soon. I just wanted to, say that we'll do our best to answer all the questions that you're sending through.
There's a lot.
But we're getting quite a bit, so rest assured that those that we do not get to live, we will respond to you in writing. Also, Nathalie maybe can mention that Telefilm, as usual, will be doing some outreach.
In the next few weeks and months. The details have not been published yet, but we are working on a schedule to do something similar as we did or as they did the last years, going to major cities, organize group session to talk to you about the changes and to meet on an individual basis with producers who have specific questions about their projects. So it will come soon. And there's always the pre-application consultation process that is managed by Telefilm Canada, our program administrator. So if you have questions about the changes, about the eligibility of your projects, whether it's in the convergent stream or the experimental stream, you can contact them and have a discussion with a coordinator or an analyst to try to solve your problems. I forgot to mention at the beginning when I was speaking about the experimental stream that there is a new system to apply to the CMF for the experimental stream. It's new this year only for experimental, both commercial and innovation programs, but not for any of the other programs. Just go to the regular login page for eTelefilm and they will direct you to the new system for the experimental projects. We can go to the questions now, so you can start.
I'll start with this while you look at the other one. The first question is, will the CMF direct a portion of this year's funding to help support companies whose legacy TV content now requires the transfer from older magnetic tape to a digital format in order to preserve and sustain Canada's TV heritage for broadcast, on-demand, and streaming platforms? Well, we don't have a specific funding program for this. It doesn't fall under the versioning program. We have, however, been working on an initiative where we hope to be able to provide support to provide more visibility to back catalog or legacy content. There are a number of discussions ongoing, so it's a bit premature to speak about that at this point because nothing is settled, but it is something that we're working on, and hopefully we'll be able to make some announcements actually even within the first quarter of this fiscal, so we'll keep you posted on that. The second question is, I will be applying to the English POV program and was wondering if you could provide more information about CRTC licensed video on demand services, which now are counted as eligible broadcasters. Do we have a list? Do they have other applicants had success securing a minimum financing commitment of 15%? So on. So that's a bit of a challenge.
Tough,
with there's a lot in there. with respect to, what's it called, Rod?
Hybrid
Rod
VOD.
Butler off camera. Hybrid VOD. You may recall that that category was recently created by the CRTC. There are discussions going on as to how to treat those types of providers with the Department of Canadian Heritage, how that aligns or not with our contribution agreement. But with respect to the English POV program, is there anything specific there, given that we still need to have a broadcaster on board at the end
before we sign
of the year,
an
a
agreement.
traditional broadcaster?
Absolutely. No, there's nothing specific with regard to VOD and POV. It's the same as in other programs, but as Stéphane said, we are still working on a potential list of type of hybrid VOD or non-hybrid VOD that would be able to trigger CMF.
So again, that's ongoing conversation for this year. So if there are changes, we'll let you know. Did you want to read that? It's a long.
That's the difference between innovation and commercial program.
Okay. Well, we have. I'm not going to read the entire program, but somebody's trying to get more clarity from us on the criteria that distinguish now the two parts of the experimental stream, so the innovation program and the commercial pilot. And it is true that when you look at it on paper, on the grid itself, the differences aren't huge. There are 5 or 6 much more granular, much more specific criteria that we'll be looking at in the commercial branch. Things like when we talk about product design attributes that seek to maximize audience reach and retention, so ease of access, play mode, user mode, the platforms on which the product will be made available, design elements created to attract a wide audience, product design and mechanisms to stimulate audience retention. Those aren't the only distinctions. Obviously, as Nathalie said, we still, because it's a requirement of the entire experimental stream, we still have to require some innovation. That's why you see a category that's called innovation, creativity, and commercial potential. But how we break down the 40% in that category will be largely based on the commercial potential of the projects. So I would invite those who are wondering, again, if you think your project is particularly innovative, try it in the innovation program. If you feel that it has a high chance of succeeding commercially, try the pilot project. If you think it will be both, then I guess you can go where you think you've got a best chance of coming out on top, or where you think you'll get more money.
Yeah, and if you have been refused in the past in the innovation program, we will allow you to submit to the commercial program this year, so you're not losing a turn or whatever. So don't worry if you're not at the right place. We'll let you know.
So now we go to the questions.
We go to the question on the side. Is value-added content subject to EIP recoupment? Technically, yes, because since we are combining the cost of the value-added digital media content and television, if it goes over the percentage of LFP, yes, it will be subject to EIP, but combined with the television. So technically, yes, but not in all cases, since we are not investors in all projects on the television side. What do you mean by regions?
Well, our definition hasn't changed. So in the English market, that's anything that's more than 150 kilometers from Toronto. It's harmonized with the CRTC.
Okay, how the 60% requirement of broadcasters project will be determined? Is it just the number of CMF projects regardless of broadcast land, or number of episodes, or total number of hours produced?
Well, if you're going the value-added way, it's when we say 60% of projects, it's regardless of budget, length, so on. It's just how many projects you submit through your envelope.
Yeah, but based on the television side, if you have, let's say, 3 different projects for, or DM project for one television, it will count for one.
Yes, based on the number of TV projects, for sure.
Okay, sorry, some are more technical. If a project has non-funded digital media component that meets the criteria of value added, why does it matter how much the budget is? In fact, you won't be able to claim a value-added projects unfunded. If you want to claim a value-added project and count it in your 60%, we have to finance it through the television budget. It will be possible to continue to have, to be able to claim unfunded, rich and substantial, but value-added, it's not possible. Is the 10,000 in marketing only for new project, or it can be applied to project already in progress? Can it be used for social media? It cannot be used for social media because social media is now qualified as a value-added project or rich and substantial if it's over 100,000. And technically, no, the rules are not retroactive, so it would be for new projects.
We just don't want to have to start doing a large number of contract amendments. It just really would be quite a burden on Telefilm.
Can we have access to the slide that you are offering? In fact, the webcast will be available in the next few days on our website and on our YouTube channel, I think. Yeah, later today, we've been told. So yes, it will be available for you to look at it over and over again.
I'd want to.
Yeah. How does it work?
How does 35% work when 10 provinces and 2 territories will access it? So the question is with respect to the ERPB. Someone is asking English regional production bonus. Someone is asking how we came up with 35%. And you know, as we said, it's based on the results that we've observed over the last few years, and you know how much goes to regional production and how that amount is spread throughout the country, and 35% in that area is approximately the maximum that Vancouver has had in terms of access over the last few years. So that really is how we came up with the 35. We want to ensure that there's meaningful access for all 10 provinces and all territories as well.
In fact, the province of Quebec and the territories, they don't have access to the English regional production bonus because they have their own specific incentives. So it's for the other provinces.
Thanks.
Hold on, the same thing for the commercial. Okay, for the commercial program, yes, we are waiting to receive all the applications before we start analyzing them. It's a selective process with a jury, so you have to apply by the deadline at the latest, and we'll do the assessment of all the files together. It takes approximately 6 to 8 weeks to get an answer.
Regarding tax, come on.
There is a movement to permit a financial structure to include private or non-profit foundation support and without grinding down CRA tax credits.
That's unfortunately not a question that we can answer. There are a number of things, like crowdfunding as well. But I think that's a question for the Department of Finance and or CRA. Unfortunately, CMF has no control over that.
Are we expanding the definition of broadcaster to include SVOD and OTT?
Well, again, those of you who participated in our cross-country focus groups last fall, we presented the proposed funding framework, what we called the continuum model. That model, we were looking to introduce additional triggers, but at this point, there are still discussions to be had with the Department of Canadian Heritage. The rules have not, or the stipulations in our contribution agreement have not been amended. So, the short answer to your question is at this point, no. But it's possible that may occur in the future, for either just additional Canadian triggers or, who knows down the road, non-Canadian triggers. But more discussion required on that issue.
One thing that we should mention for the experimental stream and all the selective programs, in fact, if you are not already registered and have an account to eTelefilm or to the new experimental system, don't wait at the last minute to register because you need a PIN code to fill out or to submit your application. It takes approximately 4 to 5 days to apply, so please don't wait and go right away on the website to qualify.
Here, of the DM projects supported by a broadcaster, is there a maximum percent that can be value added? The answer would be no. It can be all value added if you want.
In the CDMI, we mentioned that it's up to 3 projects by broadcasters in the English market. There's no such limit in the French market. In the French market, it's based on a percentage of the envelope that a broadcaster can have access to. But in the English market, we are asked if it's 3 projects by broadcaster or by broadcaster groups, and it's by broadcaster groups.
Yeah, so it would apply to all channel station in one corporate group. Do any of CMF's program fund other digital media development, such as mobile application development for social innovation, or are all funds for television screen-based projects? Well, in the convergent stream, it's all digital media content that is related to a television program that is funded through the CMF. In the experimental stream, we'll fund different, development expenses for different types of content. Again, there though, the focus will either be on innovation or on potential commercial success. So the question's gone now, but it had something to do with social development. So sorry, I can't see the question anymore. But it would have to meet either of the tests, either innovation or commercial. We've got 1 minute left. So again, I just want to reiterate, it seems like we've got
a lot more.
Quite a few questions that have come in, so we apologize that we're not able to get to them all right now, but as we said, we will answer them directly to you in writing. Yeah. Is there a last one that you wanted? Or otherwise, then I will just thank you for participating. And again, please feel free to be in touch with the team at Telefilm Canada who administer our programs, and they'll be able through outreach and pre-apps to help you further along in the application process. So once again, thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.